Okay, guys, hello and welcome back to Bright Founders Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Today, guys, we've got with us Zach Wasserman, CTO of Fleet Device Management. Zach, hello, good to have you on today. How are you?
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. Zach, before we get started and go into the world of everything that you're doing there at Fleet, I want to know a little bit more about you. I always say get to know the person behind the machine. So tell me one fact which not many people would know about you. One kind of fact about Zach.
Sure. Let's say the fact is I'm an American living in Canada. So I grew up in California in the US, and these days I live in Canada, up in beautiful British Columbia.
Where do you prefer?
The weather's better in California, but I am loving British Columbia right now. And today it's a beautiful sunny day, and we'll have like 16 plus hours of daylight since we're just past the solstice, and I do love that.
Amazing. Have you been there since the start of Fleet? Is that when you moved there?
It was actually right around that time, and it had nothing to do with the start of the company, but I have to say it was a very interesting time, 2020, both pandemic, starting a new company, and moving countries was a big change.
Did you move just before the start of the pandemic or?
No, I moved in the fall of 2020, so just as lockdowns were loosening a little bit, but still had the joy of quarantining after crossing the border and all of that kind of stuff. It was good fun, of course.
I remember that was just before the Omicron or something came about, and everyone started panicking even more, didn't they? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Let's not talk about COVID. Everyone's bored of COVID these days.
Yeah.
Me included, you included, for sure. Zach, what I want to know, just before we get to, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better. But so the audience knows straight away, tell us a little bit about what you're doing there at Fleet Device Management.
Yeah, so Fleet is a company that's sitting sort of right at the intersection of cybersecurity and IT. Our target customers are mostly medium to larger enterprises, so companies that have 1,000 employees or more. But an interesting thing about us is we've adopted the GitLab model of open core, if you will, which is kind of open source with some premium enterprise licensed features and support layered on top. And so what folks do is they use our software to manage their computers. Again, both from the IT kind of productivity, make sure that things are configured properly for people to get their jobs done from that perspective. And then from the security perspective, where it's like, let's make sure things aren't misconfigured and we're introducing vulnerabilities. Let's detect when our machines get hacked, because these days in cybersecurity, that kind of thing is inevitable. It's not an if, but when, and how well can we respond when it happens.
Nice. Tell me, at the moment, is the team, have you got the team worldwide? Are they with you down there in Canada, America? Where are they?
Yeah, the team is worldwide. I think we're about 40 some people, 45 maybe, and we're representing, I think probably at least 8 countries. So we're all remote. There's no physical headquarters. We're really, like we were just saying, this company is really a child of COVID. So I'm up near Vancouver in Canada. Our CEO, Mike, is in Austin, Texas. We've got a bunch of folks in Austin, but there's no office there. Everyone's just working from home or their co-working space or that kind of thing.
Nice. Okay, let's get into that a little bit more a bit later on. But before we do, I'm just going to fire some rapid fire questions at you. Either yes or no questions or one kind of word answer. So
Sure.
Let's get started. Team or independently?
Team.
Nice. Are you a risk taker?
Yes. I like risk management, though, let's say.
Okay. Makes sense. Work-life balance. Is it important for you?
Absolutely.
Are you more focused on short-term goals or long-term goals?
The long term at the moment.
Do you consider yourself a hands-on leader?
Yes, definitely.
Are you happy with this year's success so far?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, good. Who were you at the start of this adventure and who are you now? What has changed?
Okay, that's not a one-word answer.
That's a little longer one, yeah.
So at the start of this particular adventure, I was a lone wolf. I was a consultant on my own, working with a handful of different clients, and kind of just the person getting the job done. Spent a little bit of time in meetings and a lot of time just getting the work done. Like I was writing the software for whatever they needed to do. And over these last 2.5, getting close to 3 years since we started this company, my role has evolved from sort of being the lone tech guy at Fleet to a manager, recruiting a team of engineers, a manager of those engineers, a manager of managers, and now it's really evolved into I'm actually not directly in the management chain at all anymore, and my style of leadership is kind of I work with everyone in the company throughout sales, marketing, engineering, our customers, all of that. So it's, I think at this point, I'm really all about like just bringing the good, excited energy and insights to like people sort of throughout the stack, if you will, of what makes a company run and our customers successful with our software.
So you said there, Zach, that you are a hands-on leader. What and how did you learn this kind of skill then? If you went from the lone wolf, the tech guy to the leader, how did you learn that? That's the skill that I guess you have to be thrown right in there to learn that, no?
Yeah, I mean, leadership is something that I've worked on and trained on kind of throughout my life in a lot of different contexts, and so I think that for me, it's not the leadership part that has been so challenging. It's more like the planning and the scaling and organization, and the planning the work of so many different people. So like inspiring people and helping to spread kind of the motivations, that portion of leadership has something I've developed through my life. But the figuring out really how to get so many different people pointed in the right direction and what direction that is, that's the kind of thing that I've spent a lot of time talking with my co-founder about, talking with various different kind of coaches and mentors, and learning how to get everything aligned as best as possible.
Nice. Okay. Zach, let's go back in time a little bit before Fleet began, because I want to go back to your history and learn a little bit more about you. So when doing some research into your past, you worked for Facebook back in the past for around 1 year, maybe a little bit longer from what I saw. Every time someone speaks about Facebook, ears pop up. People want to know what it's like. People think, oh my God, that must have been such an amazing experience. How amazing was that experience? And how I see that after Facebook, you weren't there long and you moved on to become a founder of your first, what I believe was your first startup. So how amazing was that experience, and how did it give you that kind of confidence to go into the startup world?
It was really amazing, and it was super important on my journey, as we'll kind of dig into here in the rest of my answer. It was also ultimately just a job at a big company in an office, a really nice office. They treated us so well. People really believed in what we're doing. I think it was kind of the glory days of Facebook. I joined like a little bit post IPO, but there were still only a few thousand people at the company, and
Wow.
There was just a lot of great engineering work going on, and people, I think, at least in North America, people still kind of adored Facebook as a really great place to connect. But for me personally, the biggest thing was at Facebook, I got involved with an open source project called OS Query. I helped co-create the project, and Facebook was really committed to open source at the time. So this was like a security project that we built, and we were able to spend a non-trivial amount of time getting the project out there into the public, convincing other people to use it. And that has formed the basis for everything that I've done since then. So when we're talking about my history of what I did, I left Facebook. I think I just had enough of the office. Was part of it. I was commuting and very, very structured life, and if you look at the rest of my history, it's all been much more self-directed. But I left Facebook. I got into consulting on OS Query, the open source project that we had done. Within like another year after that, I had founded a company that was using OS Query along with Mike Arpaio, who was the guy who'd originally had the vision for OS Query. And we kept going down that path. And I'll just kind of fast forward, eventually, went back to consulting and then eventually started another company, which is Fleet, which is, again, still really kind of built on OS Query. So that time at Facebook, even though it was short, like just a little over a year, yeah, it's really formed the basis for my entire career. So I have to give it a huge amount of credit to like the people there and the leadership that allowed us to put that kind of investment into something that is now making so much impact, both on the industry at large through like huge deployments of that software across a number of organizations you've heard of, like Google and Apple and of course Facebook and that kind of thing. But also for me personally in my kind of entrepreneurial journey, being able to build on top of something so solid and with such adoption.
What is it that Facebook is able to breed where people get that kind of ability to go off and build something amazing after? What is it that they do there? What is it they tell you different to what other companies do? Because, I mean, it's obviously no statistics here, which I've got, but you hear about so many people coming from Facebook, taking what they've learned after a short amount of time, putting it into their own business. What is it that they taught you there?
I think it's their willingness and it's their foresight to invest in open source that they realized if you invest in open source, you can attract some of the best engineers out there and people who have real visions for things they want to build and want to build things that are lasting. So that's why I think you see these kind of massive projects that have become so foundational to what so many people are doing in the tech world, like React.js, for example, coming out of Facebook. And I think that they really, they really had the kind of hacker ethos and the recognition that like so much of tech and software is built on open source, and that you can, as a company, invest in that and give back to that, and it makes no threat to your competitive advantage. Like as a social network, you can release security tools for free, and that's not going to affect your moat there. So I think that it's just that kind of foresight and that kind of belief from the upper levels of management and the willingness to invest in that, I think is really the huge factor.
Okay, tell me, let's fast forward a little bit. So let's go to I guess it was around 2019, sorry. If Philippe was born in 2020, the idea came a little bit before. Where did the idea come from?
Okay, so actually the idea for Fleet in a lot of ways goes back to 2017, or is it maybe even 2016, with my prior company, Collide. So we built the original Fleet code base at Collide, and we pivoted and open sourced that work and kind of abandoned it. And then while it was sitting out there abandoned, people started using it, and people who I was excited about. And so when Fleet kind of pivoted again, I found myself at a bit of a crossroads and realized that it really was this kind of the open source stuff that people were really invested in and really using that I wanted to focus my energy on. So I went back into the consulting world, kept working on Fleet as sort of the sole maintainer, sole developer of that project. And I did that through 2018 and 2019. And it was in 2020 when I was approached by Sid Sijbrandij, who's the CEO of GitLab. And like I said, they're kind of one of the pioneers of this open core business model. And he now has a fund that he's calling Open Core Ventures. And so they're looking to invest in sort of technical founders, people who have been working on open source projects. So he approached me and said, like, hey, let's build a company with this fleet stuff that you're doing. So the idea was really there, and it had been germinating for quite a while, and we had some real significant users, and I had great clients who were funding sort of just pure open source development on it. And then the big shift was like learning more about this open core business model, putting together a company that was more than just myself in order to kind of expand the vision and try to serve more people. And that's what started happening in 2020.
Okay, so where did you find your partner, your CEO from then? So how did you get to that journey to, first of all, find someone to join this journey for you and to convince them to jump on board?
Yeah. So this is such a COVID story, really. So in mid 2020, like I said, I was just kind of chugging along, working on Fleet. The adoption was increasing a bit, and I was approached simultaneously. In 1 week, I was approached by the CEO of Elastic and the CEO of GitLab, both with kind of interest in what I was working on. And Sid, the CEO of GitLab, his angle was he wanted to invest in starting a company here. And his pitch was like, I'll support basically whatever you think is the right thing to do with this. I'll give you guidance. Nice. He said, I don't think that you'd probably want to be the CEO, but we could talk about that if you want. But I've got someone in mind who I think would make a good CEO, who's also got experience in open source and that kind of thing. And I kind of looked at the situation and was like, I think you're right. I don't want to be the CEO. I want to be focused on the technical stuff, and I'm not as interested in the pure business side. And so he connected me with Mike McNeil, who's now my co-founder and CEO. And I just had a good feeling about the whole situation. It was the middle of COVID, and it just felt like the time to kind of make a bit of a leap and see how something goes. So we started working together, and
it's a difficult thing. That's kind of like a blind date kind of thing, yeah? Where you just meet someone and then just try to make it work.
Yes. Yeah. And the way I looked at it was like, well, what's the risk to me? Like, I work with someone on this project for a little while and it doesn't work out, and I go back to what I was doing, which I was loving. It didn't feel like that high a risk there. In the most, I think, 2020 story ever, like I didn't meet Mike, my co-founder, in person until we've been working together for over a year. And same with Sid, who was our initial investor. I didn't meet either of them in person until over a year of working together. So it was just a true COVID story, I think.
Absolutely. Strange things to do, to meet in person after all that time. Absolutely. Tell me, for our listeners here, people that are on the same journey, how do you make it work with a co-founder that is just given to you, that is just handed in your lap? Someone you know nothing about, there's a lot of co-founders that come on the show and say, oh, I knew them from 10 years ago. I knew their skills, I knew it would work out. How do you make it work with someone which you actually at that moment in time have nothing really in common except the business needs to work? How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a bit of an opportunity there in that you have kind of a blank canvas to work with and to define your relationship. So I think that it gives you the opportunity to start from day one being really transparent and really open with your communication. You ideally have no baggage going into that. And ideally, I think any co-founder you have no baggage with. But I think that the reality is, like, human relationships are complex. And I think having a blank canvas is not it's not necessarily a bad way to start. So just going in and really defining, kind of what are each of our goals? How are we going to support each other and support the business? And then reflecting on those things regularly, particularly in the beginning, and making sure that you're just really, really open with, what's working well, what's not working well. I think it's all the same advice probably that I'd give to people who did know each other.
Yeah.
And I think just being really honest with yourself, like, is this working? And being willing to, I think, walk away if it's not working.
How difficult is it to finish up one of your startups before to go on to a different venture? So you did this before. You said you had your first venture that you went on before you actually came to Fleet. I think you called Collide. Yeah.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to make that move? Because at the same point, that's your first startup, that's your little baby. How do you first of all know when to leave, and how do you make that move to leave?
Yeah, I mean, at the time at Collide, what had really drawn me to Collide was the opportunity to work more with Mike Arpaia. I know it's a little confusing, two Mikes here. So Mike Arpaia, who was the one who I'd worked with at Facebook and who'd had the original vision for OS Query, which was the open source project that we put out at Facebook. So the thing about Collide that I think was so exciting was working with Mike Arpaia. And at the time that I left Collide, the company was pivoting again a little bit further away from what I was most interested in, and Mike was leaving the company as well.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't a particularly hard decision at that time. It just felt like the company was going a different way. My biggest kind of personal connection to the company was also leaving, and I had an opportunity to continue working on the stuff that I was most passionate about, which was Fleet. So, you know, the company, it meant doing it without all those resources. But I think you asked about risk earlier, and I talk about, and I said, yeah, I like risk, but I also like risk management. So kind of looking at it from a risk management perspective, it was like, well, what was the risk? I was giving up maybe the opportunity to be part of this thing, but it wasn't really what I was super excited about. And the risk was like, well, I could keep working on the thing I was excited about and it wouldn't work out, and then I'd have to get another job. So yeah, I think it is the kind of risk that was very manageable, and turned out well.
Absolutely. You say that about risk management. It's not surprising you like risk management, being obviously involved in cybersecurity as well as one of the things which you obviously have to have a skill, I guess, in, and also enjoy. Tell me, in regards to Fleet, let's talk about a few of the challenges which you faced since 2000. Let's look a little bit later than 2000 and the years of COVID. Let's look more about the biggest tech challenge which you have faced since the inception. What would that be?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that the perennial challenge for a company like Fleet, where you're trying to manage computers, you know, thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of computers across an organization, the biggest challenge tends to be you have so much diversity of the configurations in those computers that you just, you know, it's almost like inevitable that you just start to run into places where the software doesn't behave as you expect. And so just really trying to be kind of rock solid, particularly on the software that runs on the computers, what we call the agent software. So what runs on those computers themselves, and then have really good tools in place to start to debug the issues that come up there. Because we control the server so much better, or we're able to control the server so much more effectively than we can control those computers, because ultimately those computers are being used to get people's jobs done, because they're the workstation that someone works on, or it's the server that's running the money-making operations of the business. And so that, I would say, is the biggest technical challenge.
And you said at the beginning about working in cybersecurity as well. One of the biggest challenges is security breaches, which is inevitable in the industry. Tell me about a time where, I'm guessing over the last 3 years, you've had then a security breach to some level. Tell me about this, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, for sure. And to be clear, at Fleet, we build software that teams at other organizations use to manage their security. So we're usually not directly involved in the security incidents, but certainly we have seen, for example, high profile incidents where, potentially our customers are making it into the news for the security incidents that are occurring, and they're using our software to do their investigations, to dig into, what is the scope and extent of the attack that they've sustained? How can they be sure that they've eradicated the threat from within their infrastructure? And so they'll be looking to us for some, how do we best use the software to do that kind of thing? But really, we're kind of about enabling their teams to do that work with the tools that they need.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the future, Zach. So obviously we're seeing the rise of machine learning, AI, incredible kind of levels, ChatGPT, everyone talking about crazy, which it is crazy, it's absolutely amazing. Tell me, what do you see within the next couple of years happening in your industry where will there be kind of some crazy advancements in the next couple of years like there has been with ChatGPT? What do you foresee?
I'm not foreseeing like revolutionary advancements in this part of the industry, but what I am foreseeing is the kind of merging of security and IT. I think historically there's been like IT is responsible for helping people get their jobs done with technology, and security is responsible for preventing, risk management, essentially. I think that people are realizing that in order to do either of these, it has impacts on the other side of that. And so starting to kind of merge those teams is a trend that I think that we're going to see more and more. And we're going to see that like security people already do care about productivity and they'll care more. And we'll see that IT people care about risk management and they'll care more as, cyber attacks, I believe, will continue to increase because it's a great way to make money online right now, particularly if you're coming from a country where it's basically allowed or at least ignored by the government. And so I think the threats aren't going to go away. I think that the use of technology in businesses is definitely going up, especially with, with AI and ML and all of that, but with just every part of technology. And so I think that just the continued integration of all of these things is really what we're going to see in my little corner of the industry.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's a new kind of era. There's something has happened that we've stepped in this new kind of era of technological advancement. Zach, tell me, just two more questions for you here. So first one is a more personal on your personal journey. If you knew something from the beginning, so for example, if you could go back and do it all again with all of the knowledge that you have gained over the last however many years of your career, what would be the thing which you know now, which you didn't know then, which would have helped you out the most?
It's a great question. I mean, I think I'd heard this all along, and I knew this on some level all along, but to really internalize the idea that the overnight success is such a myth, and it's so much comes from kind of a survivorship or confirmation bias, and that really most things that are significant and most things that matter are going to just take a lot of work, and some of that work is going to feel like a grind, and we need to take care of ourselves during that time, and we need to be not disappointed that we haven't created overnight success, but momentum does build, and people will eventually buy into a vision if you're bringing them value and you're bringing enthusiasm to that and you're working hard to iterate. So I think just remembering that each day, like when things are hard, like you just keep going because that's how you get somewhere.
Absolutely. I had one guy on the show not long ago, and he said, not verbatim, but he said something to the point of, we try to be better by 1% every day, and then in 100 days time, we are 100% better than we were from those 100 days before, which is that journey. The startup world is the journey to success. I haven't had anyone on this show yet which has said, in a night, we did it. Last question for you, Zach. Tell me, In regards to, you were saying when I asked you those fast, rapid fire questions at the beginning that you were happy. Hell yeah, you're happy with this year's success. Tell me why you're happy with this year's success and what do you hope for the second remaining half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm really jazzed about right now is 3 years ago, like I said, I was the lone wolf working on this project, and now we've got 40 some people working on it. Everyone seems genuinely pretty excited. Our customers are excited. Our investors are excited. As far as I can tell, our team members are excited and happy, and just seeing a vision come to life and expand even beyond, where I dared to imagine at that time is super exciting.
Sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, Zach. It's amazing to pick your brain and hear everything that you're doing at Fleet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Matt.